Hello, and welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I believe that love is real, and we have a guest today.
Hello there. I'm Calvin Keener. Of First Steps, a Star Wars podcast, and I have seen a lot of Star Wars.
Have you seen, Calvin, are you a comics reader?
I am. And
have you seen Dr. Aphra number 31?
I have.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes.
It was a good week for people who like Dr. Aphra.
It was a good week for people who like Star Wars comics in general.
It was a good week for gay people.
It was.
We had a fantastic week. Yes, Calvin is joining us for First Steps, a Star Wars podcast, which we already had Wyatt on for episode 3. But Calvin, do you want to kind of refresh our audience? If somehow, some way, somebody started with this episode and didn't listen to our episode 3 covered, do you want to catch our audience up on what First Steps, a Star Wars podcast is?
No. Okay. I'm kidding. It's a chronological watch of Star Wars, all of the movies and TV shows from the eyes of a newcomer. So we are currently covering Rebels season 2, and Andy had never seen any Star Wars, our co-host, before we started this, and they have seen everything up to then, and they haven't even seen the original trilogy yet. And
Andy
we're not going to get
Death
to the
Star is.
No, well, they have seen the Andor post-credit scene, so they have seen the Death Star being built, but they do not understand what it is. They thought it was Palpatine's metal planet, I think was their quote.
It's like Darth Vader's metal planet, I think was what they said.
Yeah.
No, it's one of the most interesting podcasts to listen to because, like, there are certain Star Wars things that we just sort of all assume that if you know what a Star Wars is, you assume you know, like, the plots of the first 3 movies, that you know the jokes from the prequel trilogy. Like, you at least have a basic understanding. Andy knows none of these things.
Yeah.
So Andy is watching this in order, and, like, things that... Like you guys talked a lot about your Clone Wars coverage, that a lot of it is built on the idea that you've already seen Revenge of the Sith, which Andy had not. So they had a much different experience with the Clone Wars than most people who watch the Clone Wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it really makes something like Order 66 just completely recontextualized. Yeah.
Well, before we dive into the episode, I do want to say right up front, you will have heard, if you have listened to previous episodes, you will have heard a prelude on the Wyatt episode where I talked about the WGA writer's strike. And I do want to say that Bradley and I are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it on the next episode that Bradley and I are on by ourselves. We want to give our guest episodes time to breathe. We want to give our guest episodes as much time as possible to talk about the episode with our guests. So for the moment, just know we are completely in support of the WGA strike. Writers should be paid, compensated fairly for their work, and Bradley and I will discuss this in depth on our episode 7 coverage, which is going to be coming up in a couple of weeks here. But I'm going to throw that at the beginning of the episode for now. With that out of the way, let's take us into an episode that was written by somebody who definitely did not write the entire next season so it could go into development in order to get away with being able to still be in development while the WGA strike was going on.
This week, we're talking about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 5, The Pirate. The people of Nevarro need protection from rampant pirate attacks. Calvin, what's one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
I mean, honestly, like, I loved so much about this episode that it's hard to pick one. Like, this episode was just pure Star Wars, and it was great. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I just like that it hit every vibe. And on a similar note, I mean, I did not like the way that my ass felt when it hit the floor when I fell out of my chair when Garazeb Aurelios came on screen.
I do think that might be our most clever dislike in Gold Squadron history.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't have a thing that I like dislike about this episode. I mean, like, I guess I don't like the Nikto mask because but that's just like a nitpick, you know? I don't know. I was having fun this entire episode.
One thing that I really liked, I liked how colorful the episode was. I like how the color palette, and generally this color palette for The Mandalorian Season 3 has been very colorful. They're not afraid to have Mandalorians decked out in, like, multicolored armor, like they're not all uniform. Or the pirates are these like super colorful. They've got the red like accents and different accents to their armor, and then the guy who's in charge is like this green like swamp thing looking guy. And I love how vibrant this is. I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is so much more of a far cry from like season 1. Like almost exactly the same battle in exactly the same city in season 1 was so much like grittier and more down to earth. And this one's like still down to earth, but they're not afraid to like make it look pretty. Like it's fun to look at. The one thing I didn't like, and it was gonna be down in my notes, but I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up now just because it is the thing that irks me the most about this episode. All of the pirates are aliens. All of them. There is not a single human pirate that I saw. They are all Quarren or Nikto or Klatooinians, or there's an Ugnaught there. I don't like that. I like that aliens are here, but I just like that all of the good guys are human looking and all of the bad guys are alien looking. I feel like that's kind of missing the point of Star Wars a little bit. If you kind of accidentally do that sort of humans are the good guys, aliens are the bad guys kind of thing, it makes sense in like a broader like, oh, okay, we just came out of like 25 years of a human supremacist state ruling the galaxy, so aliens are going to be the most disenfranchised. I don't think the show is that clever. I think the show is genuinely just like, let's make all the pirates weird aliens because we want to put more aliens in the show. And it hits wrong, and I don't like that. But I mean, overall, I love the episode. And also, my ass too hit the floor when Garazeb Aurelius came on the screen. Bradley, what about you?
For me, my like and my dislike were exactly the same thing. I like that Zeb was on the screen. It was fucking amazing. And honestly, I did shit my pants. However, it was also the thing I hated about this episode because it took me out of the episode because I could not focus ever again after that. Like I had to rewind the episode and rewatch that whole scene over again because I was so distracted by the fact that it was so amazing. Like I was like, wait, what was the plot? What were we actually doing in this episode? I had to rewind and remind myself because I was so like taken out of the situation because I was so excited. That's not necessarily a super bad thing, but I was just like, I was shocked, I guess. And then I was like, wait, what were we dealing with again on this? Oh, pirate. That's right. There's a plot going on here.
Alrighty. You want to go ahead and take us into the episode then?
Absolutely. So we begin on the planet Nevarro, where High Magistrate Grief Karga is discussing city designs when they hear screams outside. A pirate ship has arrived. Karga orders the droid to evacuate the civilians to safety. Pirate King Gorian Shard hails Karga, and Karga mentions that Nevarro is under the protection of the New Republic. Shard argues that this is an independent world, and he doesn't care. Shard warns him not to hail him again unless it's to surrender. Shard's ship commences and an aerial bombardment of the town. Title card, Chapter 21, The Pirate.
The engineer in the opening scene is played by London Kim. He's been in Barry, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the Rush Hour TV series. Chances are good you've probably seen him somewhere before. I find it interesting that Gorian Shard identifies Grief Karga specifically as the guildmaster of something called the Nevarro Hunters. I think that's the first time we have actually gotten like
The
confirmation of what the bounty hunting guild in season 1 was called. Because I just always assumed it was like Legends, that it was just like the Bounty Hunters Guild and he was a guild master of a specific section of it. But no, apparently it's a thing called the Nevarro Hunters. I also find it interesting how Grief the whole last couple episodes has been like, nah, I don't need any help from the New Republic. We're an independent world, yada, yada, yada. The second he's facing down Gorian Shard, he's like, well, you know, the New Republic and us are actually besties. We're actually super chill with each other.
He's like, there's a bunch of X-Wing pilots just chilling right now on my planet. Ha ha ha. Like,
it's just interesting. He's real willing to invoke the New Republic.
He's really trying to bluff his way out. And Gorian Shard even comments that. And it's a fun little scene. I really like Grief's little like city engineering thing as someone who likes stuff like The Sims and Animal Crossing and stuff. He is definitely doing his little city designing thing.
What's funny to me is he's like, we should move the trade district closer to like this other specific thing. And I'm like, how much money is that going to cost you to do? You're looking to move a whole district. How's this going to work exactly? But
That's why it's like a video game.
It is
Because
like
you can
a
just
video
pick
game.
it up and move it. And like, it'll just happen in real life.
I mean, he did move a school into a bar, so I guess it makes sense that he's like replanning the city. He's just like, oh no, that's a school now. That's not a bar.
I saw somebody talking online about how, I totally would want a farming sim set on Dalna during phase 2 of the High Republic. If you know, you know. And so now I'm thinking, when do I get my Sim City management game on Nevarro? I think another interesting thing that comes out of this conversation is we learn that part of the reason Nevarro was left alone for so long was actually that Moff Gideon was protecting it from pirates.
Right. The presence of the Empire the remnant of the Empire was scaring away these ne'er-do-wells.
Right. And he talks about, like, Gorian Shard talks about, like, the Imperial Remnant and the New Republic both, like, keep their respective areas free of pirates, and we'll see it. Calvin, you've seen the entirety of the rest of the season, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so unlike Wyatt, I don't have to curb my spoilers. Next episode, when we get to the Mandalorians kidnapping back that guy, we do see that, like, the Empire is charging protection money. So I do find it interesting that Gideon was apparently protecting Nevarro.
Now, was he doing this on purpose, or was this like just an effect of his presence?
It was definitely on purpose, because like doesn't Gideon say in the finale that he was working with the pirates, or was that just Carson Teva's suspicion?
I think that might have just been Carson Teva's suspicion. I don't know.
I feel like he mentions it to the Shadow Council or something. Like,
I don't know. See, my problem with the Shadow Council scene is every time Brindle Hux comes on the screen, I burn with an uncontrollable rage. And so I can't focus on what's being said.
I can imagine.
Phasma is a good book, and everyone should read it.
Once I get my hands on a copy, I definitely need to.
Phasma and Black Spire are a really good duology. And then if you ever go to Galaxy's Edge and you meet Vi Moradi, you will know who that is.
I can now say that I know who that is because I, one, have read Phasma, and I just finished Black Spire. So I actually have a full compendium knowledge of the whole story, I guess, because it's only those 2 books, right?
It's only those 2 books.
Yeah, so there you go. So honestly, where's my Phasma / Galaxy's Edge Vi Moradi mini-series, ?
Why? We bring this up. I feel like we bring this up every time we bring up Vi Moradi. Why hasn't she shown up in more things? She's literally a face character at the parks. Why hasn't she shown up in more? It's very bizarre. And then, of course, we get Grief Karga does the classic message in the droid thing. Now, it's clearly a pre-recorded message, but he does do the classic, I put the message in the astromech droid, complete with the bend down and slide in there the same way that Leia does in A New Hope, which I did think was a nice touch.
At the New Republic outpost, several New Republic pilots are socializing at a bar. The bartender hands Carson Teva a data disk containing a message from Grief Karga, who requests help from pirate. Pilot Garazeb Aurelius overhears Karga's message, expressing sympathy for the situation. Teva plans to forward Karga's message for help to Coruscant, but the New Republic is overwhelmed with requests and will take weeks to respond. Teva decides to go to Coruscant himself.
All right, let's get the small notes out of the way first, and then we'll talk about the only thing anyone gives a shit about in this scene. Adelphi, which is the base the planet they're on with the base, was first mentioned in Chapter 10, The Passenger, in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. However, it did also appear in the novel Shadow of the Sith. So this was actually not its first appearance on screen. I believe they went there in Shadow of the Sith at one point. However, this is the first time we're visually seeing it with our eyeballs. So I thought that was cool, and I wanted to throw in the plug. If you thought Rise of Skywalker didn't make sense at parts, go read Shadow of the Sith.
Excellent book.
It will explain a lot of these things. The other small note I have is, yes, that is the directors back from the first season. Deborah Chow as Sash Ketter, Rick Famuyiwa as Jib Dodger, and Dave Filoni as Trapper Wolf. I made it through all those names without cracking up.
Almost made it through.
Almost. I came close.
I love it. I love it when I love a good Star Wars name. Trapper Wolf.
Jib Dodger.
I just love that they were like, you know what? We really need some extras in this scene. How about this, guys? Why don't we just do the whole "you guys are the pilots" thing again, and then we could save some money on extras.
Well, I like that they're all hanging out together too, because like very clearly they are a unit because they showed up in season 1 to blow up the space station. So there's one other pilot here, but we'll get to him in a minute, because I do have one big note before we get to that, and that is, this is the first time you can sort of tell in this episode this was supposed to be Cara Dune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I don't have that confirmed, like, explicitly,
right,
but this episode makes a lot more sense if you think that this plot line was probably intended for Cara and not for Carson Teva. Because, like, why would I keep saying Gideon. It's Grief Gideon. And they talk about Gideon a lot in this episode. Fuck me. Why would Grief go to Carson Teva, a guy that he met once, as opposed to Cara Dune, his former marshal? And then, like, when Carson Teva shows up at the Mandalorian covert later, it's like, again, this scene would have hit a lot more if it were Cara Dune, but it's Carson Teva.
Yeah,
and you can sort of tell.
He barely knows him, too, because he's just kind of like, oh, I almost arrested you one time. Like,
it's the cops that have pulled him over twice.
Right.
Show up. And, like, I'm not complaining because I like Carson Teva way more.
No,
but
for sure.
The fact remains, this very clearly was a repurposed Cara Dune plot.
Which would have been essentially a backdoor pilot to Rogue Squadron or something.
Rangers of the New Republic.
Or Rangers of the New, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, so you could see the little sprinkles of it in there.
I fully agree with Wyatt's tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that this is some Rangers of the New Republic stuff that they sort of crammed into Mando Season 3 and ended up displacing part of Book of Boba Fett. And I think that had everything gone through and we'd have gotten the 2 episodes at the end of Book of Boba Fett as the opener to this season, this would have been like the bit where it crosses over with Rangers of the New Republic. Like, this would have been that. But I guess not. I guess this is what we get. What else we get is Garazeb motherfucking Aurelia showing up. My notes just say Zeb, Zeb, Zeb over and over again.
Yeah.
For several lines.
I screamed, I squeaked, and nearly woke up my roommates and fell out of the chair. And he looked so good.
Jara Tapal fucking walked so that Zeb could fucking run.
Yeah.
Like,
and like, I love how they've just been, working on that since then. It's so nice.
I didn't recognize him initially. I was like, oh, he's talking to a Lasat pilot. That's interesting. That voice is really familiar. Because I watched this with my boyfriend, and we watched it after watching The Bad Batch because The Bad Batch made me so depressed and sad. And I wanted to finish The Mandalorian first. So we watch it and we get to the scene. And for the next like 5 minutes or so, I turned to him like 2 or 3 times and I was like, was that Zeb? Was that Zeb in the episode? I'm pretty sure that was Zeb. And he's like, Charles, please shut the fuck up. It is 1 a.m. and we both want to go to bed. Let's just finish this goddamn episode. Sure enough, I was right. It was Zeb. Zeb being voiced once again by the incomparable Steve Blum.
It's just, he's so good. And I've been restarting Rebels season 2. I just watched Siege of Lothal, and I don't know, Zeb's voice, Steve Blum does. It just sounds so good in like live action.
It does.
It's not so Uncanny Valley.
It's so bizarre how well this translates over to live action.
And this was one of the one things that when we were like first talking about Rebels characters coming to the screen with like Ahsoka way back when, we were like, ooh, this is going to be one of those ones where like, I don't think they're ever going to do it because it's just not going to look right, or it's just not going to sound right, or it's just not going to, it's going to be practical and then it's going to look funny and then it's going to be not practical and look too CGI. And then I don't know, somehow they magically made this look like just a beautiful blend of practical and CGI and the perfect voice actor. Like, I don't know how they did it, but this is like Luke on steroids. This is like amazing. This looks perfect.
These ILM folks are something else.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
This is like the Luke Skywalker thing if it were actually good. Like if it were fucking creepy and awful.
Yeah. I definitely should have done it the way that you did, Charles. Because that morning was the Bad Batch finale. I distinctly remember it because I watched this episode first and then I went to Bad Batch afterwards.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I did the opposite.
Yeah. I feel like I would have liked having this as a, little bring my psyche. Although I don't know if I could have paid attention to Mandalorian after Bad Batch.
I was so mad at the ending of Bad Batch season 2. I was so unsatisfied and unfulfilled. It's like, I apologize, but we are an explicit podcast, so I am going to make this comparison. It's like you have a really unsatisfying grinder hookup, so you have to go find another one. That was me after the Bad Batch. And like, it was good. The guy was hot. I just left feeling really unsatisfied and immediately got on my phone and found something else.
You got on your grinder and found Garazeb Aurelios.
I found Garazeb Aurelios, which perfectly satisfied me in every way that I conceivably needed.
See, I just want to be in a sandwich between Zeb and Callus. I miss Callus.
Callus in live action. When are we gonna get Callus in live action?
That's for me. That's the next step, right? Like, what's the next character that's making their way? I just hope that Ahsoka is just every episode is just gonna be like, hey, do you remember this one character in Rebels? Here they are, like,
and then they kiss.
And then they kiss on the battle. Oh, we go to Lyrasan at some point. And we see their farm that, according to Steve Bloom, they're like retired to. So I prefer Steve Bloom's explanation to whatever we're getting in canon.
Up next, Captain Teva travels to Coruscant. He enters the New Republic military facility and heads to Colonel Tuttle's office. Tuttle replays Karga's distress message, and Elias Kane steps into the office, and Tuttle asks her opinion about the Outer Rim. She informs them that Nevarro is not yet a member of the New Republic. Teva argues that they cannot leave planets defenseless, but Tuttle explains that member worlds have priority and expresses frustration over lack of resources to assist Nevarro. Ultimately, Tuttle denies sending help to Nevarro because it is not a member planet, but it promises to explore allocating resources in the future. Meanwhile, on Nevarro, Karga leads the displaced inhabitants of Nevarro City as they take shelter outside the city.
So our Rhodian receptionist, being played once again by Dawn Denninger. Dawn Denninger, who we remember is the specialty costume manufacturer. And I do believe she played the Rhodian as well in the Pelimoto scene in episode 2. Continuing our grand tradition of people who worked in the crew in The Mandalorian showing up in it in some form. Colonel Tuttle is played by Tim Meadows. Tim Meadows has 110 acting credits. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm only going to go through one because it's the one that every gay man over the age of 25 is going to know.
Every single one.
Every single one of us is going to know what it is. He was in Mean Girls as Mr. Duvall, but he's been in a lot. Most recently, he's been in Rian Johnson's Poker Face. He's been in Bob's Burgers, BoJack Horseman. So he's been
SNL.
in a lot of things.
He was on SNL for a while. Yeah,
he's a big comedy. He's a big comedy actor, which is interesting because this is a very serious scene.
But no, I love this tradition that we have of just like comedians showing up in Star Wars. Like, it's the perfect place to get started. Like, I want to see Tina Fey. I want to see everyone from that like age of comedy.
There you go. Tina Fey is Pelimoto's sister.
Yeah, I want Kristen Wiig. Everyone.
Oh my god, if Kristen Wiig showed up in Star Wars, I would literally die.
I
would literally die.
I would stop doing the podcast because they can't possibly top that. Like, we would be done at that point. No, I've heard too that like comedy acting is very hard to do. It's not easy. I could say with my limited acting experience that I definitely find comedy roles a lot harder. So when you put them in a more dramatic role like this, or Migs Mayfeld in the first 2 seasons, then it really gives them a chance to show off their acting chops, which is really, really cool. So it's awesome that they got a comedian to be Colonel Tuttle, who apparently has only appeared in this. He is not from anything else. I also find it interesting he's still wearing, this is not in my notes, but I just remembered it. He's wearing the Rebel uniform still, the Rebel officer uniform, or at least a variant of it from Return of the Jedi. That's just interesting to me. Even as he's sitting here saying we're not a rebellion anymore, you're literally still wearing the rebellion uniform.
Well, because thinking about him, I've had questions about like, was he like actually fighting in the rebellion, or is he just a dude who answered a job for, administrator overseeing this thing? Because like I feel like someone who like was fighting would be a little bit more along the Carson Teva line of not be as accepting of Elliot K. I am not. Yeah.
I also like the idea though that he used to be, and he's just so like disenfranchised now because he's just like the mundane of like, oh, peace like is mundane, I guess, at this point. And so it's like, okay, well, like now I have an office job because there's no actual war going on. Like, we're good now. Like, so I'll just sit in my office all day and I don't really care about a few pirates here or there. Like, we can handle it. We'll just send someone to go fix it. It's not a big deal. But then he explains, obviously, like, oh shit, we're stretched thin, which Charles, you brought up before. Like, ooh, maybe they don't actually have the resources that they claim to have.
They clearly don't. And one thing that's interesting to me, and Calvin, you'll appreciate this a lot, which I'm glad we have somebody from First Steps on here, because y'all just finished the Clone Wars and then also did a retrospective live with the Dark Side Divas crew, which was fantastic, and I was shit on quite a bit in that live, which is appropriate. But it's interesting to me because the rebellion, the whole goal was to restore the Republic. It's literally called the Alliance to Restore the Republic. They have restored the Republic, and now they're having some of the exact same problems that the Republic had. Namely, that they can't possibly allocate resources to everybody, so they're picking and choosing which planets get the better resources, and the ones that are on the fringes get kind of shat on. Whoops, they accidentally did a Republic bureaucracy again. So I found that extremely interesting, that it kind of was the same thing. I also find it interesting that Carson Teva has definitely seen the sequel movies.
Yeah, he seems to be oddly suspicious of everybody all of a sudden.
He is oddly suspicious, something going, what's going on, Carson? Did you read the Aftermath books, Carson? Did you read them? Did you think they were good? Did you read Bloodline, Carson Teva? Yeah, that is one thing too, though, with him, is he is weirdly suspicious. This does kind of seem to come out of... They established it a little bit in season 2 where he talks to, I think it's Grief Karga, about how, clearly there is something out there, moving. But he doesn't really seem to have any evidence to support any of his suspicions. He's just kind of suddenly suspicious enough to be marching into this guy's office.
Oh, I did want to talk a little bit about Elias Kane.
Yes, I completely skipped over her in my notes, but let's talk a little bit about Elias Kane.
Yeah, one, obviously she's been brought over from, our segue episode. I don't even know what we're going to call that episode, but our backdoor pilot that doesn't exist anymore.
Our Hey Noah Clore, do you want to make a 35-minute short film?
Right. No, I love that she's back in this episode. And also, I love that Teva immediately is like, nah, something's going on with her.
Well, because it's just wild that someone, I don't know, maybe she's got the fascist haircut and stuff. So I'm just it's she's ticking off all of these red flags for me. But why are we letting someone used to be an Imperial officer in this room where they're able to make this kind of decisions? If I were in Carson Teva's shoes, I would be suspicious. Yes, I get that we need workforce, and it's good to get these people rehabilitated, but I don't know, keep her away from the offices.
They're Operation Paperclipping them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah.
I also just love how she's so good at oh, hey, I just wanted to see if you wanted a snack from downstairs. Don't mind me. I'm not eavesdropping on your conversation at all. And then he's
as soon as no one's looking at her, she's doing good. She's such a good actor. She is. And then as soon as no one's looking at her, you can see her smirk,
I find it interesting. I find it interesting because they've almost kind of made it, designed it in such a way where Carson Teva kind of has to be the asshole in calling out that, hey, this is a super Imperial line of thinking. He's right to say it, but when he says it, because of the context, it makes it look like he's just digging at the former Imperial instead of being completely right. And that's one of the things we're going to see that leads to, again, the return of the fascist movement by the time of the sequel trilogy. Now we've got to a point where we've made it to where you can't call out the former Imperials for being former Imperial and talking like a former Imperial, because that's just so mean, and they're just so rehabilitated and trying so hard.
Sounds like the Democratic Party.
Let me take just a long sip of my coffee here. But there are no politics in Star Wars. Ever. At all. For any reason. Her uniform even still looks Imperial. The amnesty badges look like rank badges. She's the clean-cut Imperial dressed in what looks like an Imperial uniform, standing next to Carson Teva, who's in his rebel digs. This is not a subtle show.
Yeah, they barely changed the color of their outfits. They were like, we'll just add a little more dye to it, make it a little more colorful, I guess, than the Imperial outfits or whatever. It's a slightly different green or blue or something. And then they're just like, well, that's different enough.
It's not gray anymore, that's all.
We're different from the fascists because it's blue this time. And that was an intensely political charged statement that I will not be elaborating on further.
Up next, Captain Teva flies his X-Wing to the planet where the Mandalorian covert is located. When Din asks how he found their location, Teva reveals that he was informed by a veteran of the rebellion in their ranks, R5D4. Teva informs them that Karga is under attack by pirates and is asking for help. Before he leaves, Teva promises not to reveal the location of the covert, and later that night, by campfire, Din gives a rousing speech to convince the covert to help remove the pirates from Nevarro. Vizsla gives his support and leads the clan in chanting, "This is the way."
Yes, remember how we said in episode 2, put a pin in R5 worked for the rebellion?
Here we go.
Well, now the pen's coming back out. R5 worked for the rebellion, apparently. Now, I don't think we actually know what he was doing in between A New Hope and now. We just know that he worked for the rebellion.
He was playing poker with Captain Cars and Tifa, and that's why they know each other.
Like, I don't think he's turned up anywhere. This is the thing, Charles.
Because it's implied that Peli got him from the Jawa, or at least that's how it read to me, because Peli's fucked a Jawa. Remember that amazing detail from Book of Boba Fett? But see, I feel like R5 was maybe part of the rebellion before A New Hope and somehow wound up on Tatooine.
So from a certain point of view, I do believe he was not part of the rebellion prior.
Yeah, but how much do they care about the publishing stuff?
It's a debatable point because they've definitely read the Aftermath books, but there's a certain other book that they definitely haven't read.
I mean, like, thinking about from a certain point of view, I mean, like, I don't feel like when Yoda's Force Ghost appears to Kenobi's Force Ghost appears to Yoda, this is semantics, tells Yoda to do Luke instead of Leia, because Yoda wanted to train Leia actually instead of Luke, but then Kenobi was like, no, do Luke. That doesn't track to me after Kenobi, but that's again me nitpicking.
Yeah, I was double checking, and he hasn't shown up in anything. He hasn't shown up in anything after.
Well, then this is their opportunity to do a cartoon, or like not a cartoon, a comic book about Carson Teva and R5D4's adventures that they had before this.
I need to check from a certain point of view, because I looked at Wikipedia to see if Calvin was right. Wikipedia seems to think that Calvin was right. Because it does list that he was involved in the rebellion before it lists that he fell into possession of a group of Jawas, but I need to double check and see the wording on from a certain point of view. It does seem like Calvin might be right and I might be wrong, that he might have worked for the rebellion prior to the events of A New Hope, and he's just been in Tatooine the entire time.
Undercover.
Wasn't R5 there just kind of in the background when Peli showed up in the first season?
Yeah, he turns up sort of in the background. Let's double check. He first appears in episode 5. Right. He's just kind of in the background. And then in chapter 9, he turns up and he projects the map up. And now he's been upgraded to supporting character in this season.
So that means, by that logic, he will be the main character of season 4.
They're going to Bo-Katan Kryze him.
Yep, he's going to take over. It's his story now. Move over, Grogu. This is the story.
Speaking of tiny details in the scene, as Carson Teva is leaving, you can hear the Resistance theme, which Wyatt did establish in our episode. See, I said when we recorded the Wyatt episode, I said Calvin's episode is just going to be a sequel to Wyatt's. It's like it worked out to have those two. Wyatt has established that is apparently diegetic in the universe and is the New Republic theme that morphs into the Resistance theme in the sequels.
Yep, just like how in Rebels you can hear the major key version of the Imperial March, which as the Imperial Anthem.
One other detail that I took note of that I think was cool was that when the X-Wing is taking off, this is the attention to detail in this show. You can actually see the X-Wing in Mando's helmet, like reflected in his visor.
Only you would notice us.
Only I would notice this.
And the editors / the special effects people in this.
Well, you know what, editors / special effects people, I noticed. I saw this only because I've watched this season several times now because I'm mentally unwell. And also because the Game of Thrones season that I'm watching right now is not good.
Oh, yeah, you're on season 5, right?
I'm on 6.
Oh.
I just finished 5. 5 was hot garbage. 6 is also hot garbage, but less bad than season 5.
I like 6 better than 5 too. Yeah.
We are having our final moment of maybe coming back up close to the surface of being good again before we're about to take a nosedive and then hit the bottom of the Marianas Trench. However, in terms of shows that are good, The Mandalorian, no. I do love how during the campfire scene they have a speaking hammer. It makes me think of the seashell from Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, it's the talking stick. And, it's very organized and civil. And I love that about them.
It's not what I expected.
Yeah,
actually, from them.
Out of like a warrior culture. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very restrained, like, there is order and organization to the meeting. And I would have expected to be like one of those like war councils where just anybody can shout anything out. And whoever shouts the loudest is the one that gets to be heard. But clearly the armor wants to make sure everybody is heard. So I think that's neat. I think that's a neat detail. I also think it's a neat twist that Paz Vizsla is like, yeah, no, we should definitely go help them.
Paz Vizsla, who was going to leave his kid to be eaten by a bird.
But Bo-Katan didn't give up on the kid, so Paz Vizsla is a good guy now.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so glad that they're finally getting off of this murder planet. Like,
it's just the Grand Canyon filled with water, so I don't understand why they're getting out of here
because everything here keeps trying to kill them, Bradley.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd be like, oh yeah, this is not a great place to live. Like, let's just move on to the next place.
Exactly. But the only way that I can justify it is them thinking that it's, they're a warrior culture, so they want to live in a place that's where they're going to have to fight, because who else are they going to fight? Each other. But then you've also got like, they're not even trying to go and get their kids when they're kidnapped by birds to be eaten.
But they're also like, they want to survive. And I do feel like being eaten by an alligator turtle, like every 5 minutes, not really conducive to keeping all of your people alive.
But hey, it gives weight to Din's line about our children playing in the sun.
Yes. Also, pay no attention to all of the death flags that are accumulating behind Paz Vizsla in retrospect. I'm sure those won't be important later on in the season.
On the way to Nevarro, Bo-Katan briefs the covert on the plan to attack the pirates. Once they arrive, the pirates are pillaging Nevarro City and terrorizing its inhabitants. Din attacks Gorian-charged ship, and Karga thanks him for his help. With the main ship distracted, Kryze flies over the city, allowing the Mandalorians to drop down to the surface and engage in a gun battle with the pirate. Vane and his fighters pursue Kryze's starfighter, but she takes them out and damages the main ship. Meanwhile, the armorer takes out several pirates in Karga's office, and Vizsla leads the ground forces to drive out the remaining pirates from the city. Vane, being the last fighter, abandons the pirate crew, and Shard attempts to shoot at the citizens. Din and Kryze bring down his ship by targeting the ship's last engine, causing it to crash and explode.
Congratulations, you just summed up about 20 minutes of episode.
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't not do it because it's just one big action sequence. I couldn't not do it.
It was really well done. I feel like it was a pretty good pacing on action-wise. Like, I find that with some action within Star Wars that I kind of like lose interest about halfway through, just because it's like woo action. But this was, they flipped between everyone going really well, and when the armor came in, it was awesome.
We will get to why that probably is when we get to who actually directed this episode. Bo, I believe, identifies Gorian-charged ship as a Cumulus-class Corsair. I just double checked it, and this is the first time we've seen one of those. It looks so much like the Eclipse to me that I can't not see it, which is why I double checked to make sure that this wasn't a reference. But it does seem like they just borrowed vaguely what the Eclipse looked like in Legends. Din says that I like those odds in response to being told that he's outnumbered 10-1 as a nice callback to the very first episode of the show, where he's confronted by the 4 stormtroopers, and he says, I like those odds. Anyway, let's talk about the most important thing in this section, which is the Anzellans. Everybody come and look!
I'm surprised that they stayed in the city. I'm glad that they were still safe after the pirates came in and started ravaging everything.
The pirates probably didn't know they were there.
Yeah,
I was going to say, they probably were just like, hey, what's that little mini door on the side of the bar over here? That's weird. I think I'm just too drunk to know what that is. And then they moved on.
That little doozer door.
Yeah, they're just like, is that like a cat door? Or, oh, well, it's not open, so who cares? Yeah,
Did y'all watch Fraggle Rock?
No.
There's these in Fraggle Rock, there's these little creatures called the Doozers that build just stuff out of sugar. And the Anzellans reminded me of the Doozers. It's Fraggle Rock is great, guys. I love it.
Bradley, is this what it feels like every time I make a reference that you don't get?
Every time you make a Legends reference, or every time you make a reference to the High Republic, or every time you make a reference to a book, or every time you make a reference to a comic book, or every time you make a reference, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Don't forget the games, the animated shows, the shorts, the short comic books. Also the audio. I would say the audio dramas, but you have listened to all 2 of the audio dramas. You're missing Tempest Runner, but you have listened to Dooku Jedi Lost and Dr. Aphra. So,
oh yeah, there you go. Oh, is it considered an audio drama if more than one voice person is in it?
Yeah, it's when it has like a full voice cast.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
and they're like written like as if they were screenplays,
like a play.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Oh, that's probably why I enjoy them a lot and feel like they could make really good TV shows. But interesting.
Yeah, because they're written like scripts. You can actually get the scripts. Actually, there's 4 audio dramas now, and I have the scripts for 2 of them. I have the scripts for Tempest Runner and Battle of Jeddah. And yeah, you go through and read it, and it's written exactly like a script, like a teleplay would be, or like an old school radio play, which I think is a really interesting medium. I hope to write a audio drama one of these days. My next note is The Armorer, aka Ow.
Yeah, that was a really great just fight. Like I wasn't a fan of the Armorer at this moment because I was still incredibly distrustful of her, but not gonna lie, she came in and she ate.
As the kids say.
I didn't think that they could top her beating the shit out of stormtroopers with her hammers. And to be fair, I don't think anything will, because that was the first time we ever saw her fight, and she was beating the hell out of stormtroopers, which is always morally correct. There is never a point where it is not morally acceptable to beat the shit out of stormtroopers. However, I will say this one did at least deliver that same level of visceral action. I also liked the guy still standing at the cannon, didn't realize she'd taken out all of his guys. That was very funny to me.
The thing is loud.
My next note is that the people of Nevarro pulled what I call a Game of Thrones battle ending. In season 2 of Game of Thrones, I'll give the abbreviated version, the entire season culminates in a big battle which ends with an outside force coming in to turn the tide of the battle and save the day. In season 6, there is another big battle that ends with an outside force coming in to turn the tide of battle and save the day. This was a thing. So when the people of Nevarro all ran in and were like, we are your reinforcements now. And I'm like, okay, where were you about an hour ago? Did it take you this long to run over here from the lava flats? Like,
probably, honestly, that's what it is.
But they basically
like, oh shit, we'll get there in a second.
You guys go ahead, we'll catch up. No, I did like that they all showed up to, capture the rest of the pirates. I thought that was cool that they did contribute in some way to the battle. And I do think it is good, from a writing standpoint, that the civilians didn't actually really have to do any fighting. That would have made the scene less fun, in my opinion, if there were civilians in danger. If it's Mandalorian warriors and pirates, then that's one thing. But if it had been the townspeople, had actually been involved, that would have added another level of drama that I think would have taken away from some of the fun of the episode.
One thing, way back at the Bo-Katan had that really nice part before they left for Nevarro, where she was just kind of, giving her debriefing to the troops and stuff. And it made me think how I'm really excited for season 4 of Mandalorian, because I really want to see how she rules as in not a battle context, because we've only ever seen her fighting from Death Watch to Siege of Mandalore to Rebels. She's been fighting. Whereas, it's been her sister who does the politics and stuff. But I want to see how Bo-Katan herself does.
I'm also very curious.
She did good this time.
Well, yeah, because the only things we know about her rule were that she resisted the Empire, and then the Night of 1,000 Tears happened, and then she attempted to surrender, and the Darksaber got taken from her, and then the Purge of Mandalore happened. That's all we know about her rule. We don't know anything about her time, and this is where I wish we would get some tie-in material to maybe explore some of this. We don't know about her time before she was kicked out of the leadership of Mandalore the first time and Gar Saxon was put in. And we don't know anything about her time when she was ruling Mandalore, that brief period of time before the Empire came in and bombed it to hell. multiple times. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how she rules. I have a hot take. I have a scorching hot take. I have a be careful with your fajita pan, it is hot take. I think she's going to do a better job than Satine did. I love Satine. I don't think Satine was really able to unify the Mandalorians in the same way that Bo-Katan can. Because as much as I agree with Satine's morality of pacifism, it's just not the reality of the Mandalorian society. And refusing to embrace any old traditions at all allowed those deeply, deeply conservative factions within it to gain a foothold. And I think Bo-Katan is going to avoid repeating that same mistake because she formerly was one of those ultra-conservative terrorists. She knows how they think, and she knows how to do things in such a way that people are inclined to support her and not them. That's my scorching hot take.
I do want to talk about Vane.
Yeah, that was my next note, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, I do want to talk about Vane for a second. That was my final note of the section.
Vane being like, oh, gee, man, I would love to stay, but, like, I just got a contract to be in Skeleton Crew.
I was just about to say that. I was like,
so I gotta get the fuck out of here? Sorry, my contract's been extended. Not yours, though.
You know what, though? I really do wish that Vane and Gorian Shard would have survived, only because, I don't know, Gorian Shard is such a good character design. It's such a shame that they fucking blew him up in this episode, because maybe, somehow, we didn't see a body, so maybe he got on some kind of escape pod or something before it blew up, and we just didn't see it, and him and Captain Smee, the Ugnaught or whatever, got away.
That guy did look like Captain Smee, didn't he?
Oh, no, I thought it was a deliberate callback.
Oh, for sure.
Because, I mean, it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, so for sure they were doing a Captain Hook and Smee thing. But
how did I miss putting that in my notes? When I was
he's got a striped shirt on. I mean,
when I was like 6, Peter Pan was like my first crush. Like, I watched that movie so many times. How did I miss that?
Oh yeah, no, it was for sure exactly what they were trying to do. And actually, that would have been an interesting kind of, not, I guess, parallel they could have done with Skeleton Crew and like this group of kids being lost in space or whatever with pirates. Like, they would be the Lost Boys, and then there would be a Peter Pan figure that is rallying them or something. I don't know. I'm trying to make up the script for Skeleton Crew, I guess.
Didn't they just release one of those live action remakes? And Jude Law, who's going to be in Skeleton Crew, I think is playing Captain Hook in that.
He's in Peter Pan, yeah, or Peter Pan and Wendy. He's Captain Hook, yeah. He has our Disney trifecta.
He does when Skeleton Crew comes out.
Yeah.
When Skeleton Crew comes out, he will have a Disney trifecta.
There you go.
And a real solid Disney trifecta too. Yeah, I'm interested to see where Vane goes, but I do agree with you. I think Gorian Shard would have been a more fun villain. Vane is an interesting choice because Vane's kind of the darker of the two to pick.
He seems
like Gorian Shard is this campy pirate lord who's commanding his ship with the pirate voice. And Vane is a dude who tried to shoot his way into a school. So I do feel like Vane is an interesting choice to continue on into Skeleton Crew, but we'll see where that plays out. Apparently Skeleton Crew is a pretty dark show.
Yeah, I also feel like Vane has a potential he's that kind of villain character, has potential of eventually becoming a good guy or in some kind of way redeeming any past wrongdoings he did by, doing some kind of selfless act later on in his story. I don't know what that story is, but I don't know why. I just have a feeling like he's kind of grouchy at this point. He's not really a villain, and then he's always kind of looking out for himself, and then eventually he becomes a good guy because there's going to be a worse person.
He's going to pull a Hondo and enjoy time with kids, and it'll open his heart. I
was about to say
that's exactly it. Yeah,
that's the plot of the Hondo and Padawans episode from the Clone Wars. Like, that's it to a T. Man, we have really fallen in terms of quality of pirates in the Star Wars universe, because during the Clone Wars we had Hondo Ohnaka, and now we have Vane.
Because Hondo is like technically alive, because the Galaxy's Edge stuff is sequel trilogy, and Hondo's there.
Yeah.
So
I have seen
Hondo
him.
Ohnaka.
I mean, I'm not to be racist or anything or specious, but they are probably cousins or something, and they'll just connect it somehow, and then this just be like, he's over here, or they're brothers or something.
So that is incredibly speciesist, because Vane is, I believe, in Nikto. I'm pretty sure. Let
Yeah,
me double
Vane's a
let me
Nikto.
double check that so I am myself not
Yeah, no,
speciesist.
he's definitely a Nikto. I was just like wondering,
Vane
like,
is a Nikto. Hondo is a Weequay.
oh, is that different?
That is different.
What's different? Oh, because they had like the weird head things, maybe? I don't know. I don't know my
They
Star
look
Wars species.
very similar. In fact, they look very similar to the point where Googling Vane Star Wars does bring up pictures of Hondo Onaka.
Okay, so Google is also specious. So there.
God. You're all so fucking embarrassing.
True Star Wars fans.
True Star Wars fans can't tell the aliens apart.
After the battle, Karga thanks the Mandalorians for liberating his city and cedes attractive land to them. The townspeople cheer and celebrate, and Karga declares that the Mandalorians have a home on Nevarro. After Karga's speech, Kryze is led to the armorer's workshop by Paz Vizsla. The armorer tells Kryze that the Mandalorians must walk the way together and that Kryze is the one that can unite them all. She removes her helmet and agrees to the armorer's plan. The armorer announces to the Children of the Watch that Kryze will find other Mandalorians and bring them back with her. And it is this time that they retake Mandalore.
Greef Karga offers them land from the lava flats to Bullock Canyon. I didn't even have to Google this, I just know it. Bullock Canyon, a very obvious reference to Jeremy Bullock, who played Boba Fett in the original trilogy. I find it interesting that when Bo goes to meet with the armorer, she stands at military parade rest with her hands behind her back, like she stands in a military rest, which is an interesting acting choice there. She's acting like she's in the presence of somebody who is higher rank than her.
Well, I mean, they do have a whole conversation about.
They do have a whole conversation about
do you
this.
respect my station? You know, do you respect me as your essentially senior or authority? And she's like, of course. Like, why wouldn't I? And then she's like, well, take off your helmet then.
Because this is not a subtle show, Bradley.
I know.
This is not subtle.
But although what's funny is I did think in the first viewing of this, I thought this was a test. Like, I thought she was testing her. I also did not
think this was a test.
Yeah, I was like, she's gonna be like, fuck no, I'm not gonna take off my helmet. You're tricking me. And then she would be like, now you have to die. You took off your helmet. Like, you can't be a part of the group anymore.
I also 100% thought that was what was going on and was pleasantly surprised when it went in a different direction.
I was so mistrustful of the armor at this point. I'm no longer, but like, I thought this was a test. I thought that she was going to try to sow like discord between her and Din, as like Din being the fundamentalist versus Bo being the, new age stuff, and still kind of convinced that she was rook cast, but I've let go of that.
I also think that she's rook cast, and I have not let go of that.
It could still be true.
It could.
Because people did stuff in the past doesn't mean they are doing bad stuff now. So you never know.
Yeah. She has horns on her helmet.
She's the only one. So that can't be a coincidence.
Concordia.
Can't be a coincidence.
Just saying.
Also, Dave Filoni is not subtle at all. So let's be realistic. Let's be realistic for a second.
The armorer's sort of speech, I think, really should have been what clued me in, because she gives a speech about how there's the Great Forge on Mandalore, and there's the forge that was used in the Mandalorian covert. And they're both forges. They're different forges, and they mean different things, but they are still both forges. The armorer is essentially talking about Mandalorians here. She's sort of admitting that there's multiple ways to be a Mandalorian the same way there's multiple ways to be a forge. And different groups are going to serve different purposes in the overall tapestry of the Mandalorian society. But not every group has to be completely the same. And her coming to this realization and telling Bo this is an important step in the eventual coming together that's going to happen towards the end of the season, and how the armorer is expanding her beliefs a little bit in order to accommodate the presence of other different types of Mandalorians. She's renegotiating her own religious beliefs to better adapt to this present situation, which is a story that I find really interesting for her on second viewing.
I like this much better too, because I think when we first were talking about this show, or we were doing our episode 0, we were doing our theories, and one of my theories was that the true villain of the show was the armorer. It wasn't going to be Moff Gideon. It wasn't going to be, Bo-Katan or whatever. We were just like, oh, it's actually the armorer. She's secretly evil and she's plotting, and there's some evil conspiracy theory going on. And pleasantly surprised. I do actually like what the direction that they went with her character, because slowly but surely she's just becoming more of just a great ally. Not, there's nothing more to it than that. She's just the wise person in the group.
Yeah, I really wish that some religious leaders in our present day and age would take the same open-mindedness that she is doing. The armor really does say gay rights, I feel like.
I do feel like she has now come around to the point where she's like, you know what, gay people are fine, actually. I was against this
kiss
in the
to Bo-Katan.
And then she kisses Bo-Katan on the mouth.
I actually thought, maybe the armor was going to remove her helmet at one point. Because I thought, oh, she's adapted so much to this point where hey guys, I get that our whole thing is not taking off our helmets, but we need to show solidarity with the rest of Mandalorians because we need to create a unifying group. And though by doing that, maybe we change some of our ways a little bit. And one of those being, hey, we can all eat together in the same room.
I had also thought they were going to go that direction. I don't hate the direction they ultimately landed, which is it's more of a personal choice thing, which again, I don't think they really thought it through because up until this point, they didn't have the living waters of Mandalore for anyone to redeem themselves if they left. But what they seem to be trying to go for is not you have to adapt completely and give up your beliefs in order to work together. You just have to be willing to work together. And her being these people are still Mandalorian, even if they don't take their helmets off. I'm going to keep mine on because that is a promise that I have made, but it's just for me. I'm no longer going to be imposing that on other people. And she has this sort of uphill battle that we see a little bit in this episode of now she's got all of her little followers who think that anyone who takes their helmet off isn't Mandalorian. And she kind of has to come in and be like, no, guys, no, it's fine. It's fine. It is okay. She's still going to lead us to retake Mandalore. And it's also interesting, I don't know how I missed this the first time, that she does admit that she does think that Bo-Katan did see a mythosaur. I don't know how I missed this until now. But she does say, you saw the mythosaur. This is an omen. And I'm like, I thought you didn't believe that she saw the mythosaur in the living waters. What's going on here, the armorer?
Well, I think maybe she believes that Bo believes she saw a mythosaur, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I don't know if the armor necessarily believes that Bo saw it, but she thinks oh, well, you think you saw it, therefore you had this holy vision. It wasn't a true, actual living, breathing mythosaur in front of you, but you had some kind of miraculous vision because you went in the living waters, and because you went in the living waters, you are somehow blessed, and you are now going to be the leader of all of us, and I believe in you, so I believe you saw one.
You are Mandalorian King Arthur now.
That's exactly the exact story. And she's Merlin. Look at that. It works out perfectly.
Does that make Din Guinevere?
I think that makes Din maybe Lancelot? No. Or I feel he's more kind of knight version than
if we're
lover.
Doing the Disney version, he's the owl then or something.
Din is the owl?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Or is that R5D4? I don't know.
Is that Baby Yoda? Because don't forget, Grogu's also still here. I don't think we mentioned it
I forgot Grogu was in this episode. Yeah.
Grogu is also
so cute
here.
In I am the Nubian is a really inconvenient ship for Din to have. That baby, no matter how small he is going to grow up, and you have just taken his little window and given it back to a droid. He can sit on Din's lap for another, 10 years at best, maybe.
Yeah, but by that point, Din will have a bigger ship.
Or apparently, according to Star Wars timeline, Din's going to be 90 years old. I don't know. Just people in Star Wars age weird, so maybe he's going to be an old man and he'll just go away.
He's going to show up in the new Jedi Order movie just as a wizened old man.
Still going to his kid's football game.
Still going to his kid's football game. One guy, I just think this is funny. When Bo-Katan and the armor walk out, everybody looks up except for one guy who clearly the extra who was wearing the Mandalorian helmet missed his cue to look up. So there's one guy you can see, I think he's like polishing something.
How you gonna call this extra out?
I'm just gonna call him out because I think it's hilarious. Because we established from episode 8 that you can't see shit in these helmets. So like one guy literally missed that Bo-Katan's walking by and didn't look up. This was very funny to me. So watch the scene again, folks. When you go back to watch it again, you will see the one Mandalorian who doesn't seem to notice they're there.
Or this is the only truly gay Mandalorian. He doesn't even look at Bo-Katan like that because he's just like, I don't register that at all.
Excuse me, I disagree with this theory because if Bo-Katan Kryze walked in front of me, a very homosexual man, I would pay attention to her.
Very true. Gays are obsessed with strong women.
We are obsessed with strong women. When two of them are walking by,
there, I concede my theory then.
We pay attention. I do like that the direction they seem to have gone with Bo is that Bo spent time in the Children of the Watch, kind of. She never officially joined, she just sort of lived like they do for a while. And because of that, she has more understanding of that group and what that group values. So now she's in a better position to unify them with the other Mandalorians because she understands them. She's not one of them because she can't be, in order to lead her people back to Mandalore, but she at least understands them. And I think that is important for her character.
Finally, in space somewhere, Captain Teva discovers the remains of a missing Lambda-class shuttle and finds the bodies of several New Republic officers. It is revealed that the shuttle was supposed to transport Moff Gideon to his trial, but he is missing. Dun dun. A fragment of Beskar alloy found on the ship leads him to question if Gideon could have been taken by Mandalorians, ?
Briefly, we hear the voice of Lieutenant Reed in this scene. Lieutenant Reed played once again by Max Lloyd Jones.
Ah, okay.
Yep, if you remember, that was
That's the Luke Skywalker guy. Right.
That's the Luke Skywalker guy. He was Luke Skywalker's body double in season 2 of The Mandalorian, when they initially did the creepy robot-generated face. And then he is the other pilot that is with Carson Teva in Book of Boba Fett. And now he is back reprising that role. My only note on this entire section is, yeah, obviously Moff Gideon escaped.
Yeah, I was like, is this supposed to be a shock to us? Like, I don't understand like the whole plot.
This is not a twist.
Yeah, as soon as they didn't televise his trial, I knew they were sweeping in under the rug.
Yeah, and I'm like, it is sort of annoying because now they've done the same thing with Moff Gideon 3 times, where the first season he didn't appear until the end of episode 7, and he was like this dark looming presence over the entire season, and then he shows up at the end for the big climactic climax, and then he goes away. Barely in the second season, all the way up to at the end of episode 6 or the end of episode 7 or something like that. He's got a few scenes throughout it, but he's mainly a looming presence in the background, ready to be there for the climactic climax of the season. And then this season, he's a looming presence in the background before, guess what? He shows up for the climactic battle at the end of the season. So it's like, you've just done this again. I wish they would have given this character more to do. I wish they had not done this.
Giancarlo Esposito can do so much.
Give him more screen time.
Yeah.
Right. It is odd that they don't let him do that because he is such a phenomenal actor. So it's like, you guys, you have this like clearly perfect person right here. Like, why aren't you utilizing them more? I get it. Like, the villains don't always get screen time as much as the heroes do, but it's like, at what point are you disservicing like the character by not even showing him for most of the show?
We've done the he's a mysterious character every season until the end of this one, and we're not going to do it again. Spoilers for the finale, but it's not going to happen again. So it is a little bit irksome to me in retrospect that they have done this what is Moff Gideon up to plot twice in season 2 and season 3. And in season 3, they barely gave him any screen time. He doesn't even show up until episode 7. He's just talked about a lot, which...
Yeah, and all this story is always happens to be out after, like, it's always behind the scenes. His stories are always behind the scenes. We never see the stuff with Moff Gideon going on. Like, even in season 1, like, all this shit they were doing in season 1, they were like, oh yeah, that happened. Like, that's it. We don't get to see nothing.
Yeah, it is kind of irksome to me. But we've also ended on a bit of a misdirect with the Beskar, making us think that somebody in Mandalorian armor made him escape.
I didn't quite get that. Does anybody else feel that way?
I feel like that was a red herring of I
can explain it to you, Bradley. Spoilers for episode 8. If you haven't watched the rest of the season, skip ahead about 30 seconds. The armor that he has is made out of Beskar, the Dark Trooper armor. So it's clearly someone wearing that armor.
But like a piece of his armor just miraculously broke off and just
injected itself into the wall. Like a scraping of it got off in the wall. I don't fucking know.
Did his his jetpack stormtroopers, like not the Praetorian Guards, but those ones, were they also like Beskar alloy armor?
Clearly not, because they get
I don't think so.
Down.
Which is stupid of him to not.
Oh. Yeah. See, now I'm like, this makes no goddamn sense, actually, now that I've stopped to think about it.
Because I'm thinking of the ones because in Rebels, some of the stormtroopers had like Beskar-ish armor, right?
The only reason I feel like we have this scene is to try to make us distrust the armor or other factions of Mandalorians, to distrust Axe Woves and his people, or the armor and her people. This is just in here to lie to the audience, essentially, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I don't like it. And honestly, what I don't like about this scene either is like, if you take this scene out, it does nothing to change the plot or the story, because Teva also, he already hinted early on that possibly Gideon escaped, or we don't know what happened to Gideon, or blah, 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 blah. He says it in the little Coruscant scene. So this scene is just fluff. It doesn't really mean anything. Like, all it does is show us that Carson is just kind of behind the scenes investigating still, I guess. And he's like, kind of like, something weird is going on. That's about it.
And he shows up at the end of the season, but I think generally he doesn't show up for the rest of the season. This doesn't really affect very much.
Yeah, I think he comes in later on and he's like, oh yeah, that thing that I was actually worried about happened. And he just confirms there's something.
I don't know. This is a weird scene in retrospect. Also, like, why were they transporting him in a Lambda-class shuttle? Now that I'm nitpicking this scene, why were they transporting him in a Lambda-class shuttle?
Yeah, I don't like the scene at all. Like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore, because now we're just breaking it down too much, and it's getting the facts are unfacting because it's not working for us.
Yeah, another scene that is from another show, from the script of another show, and pasted into
100%. Yeah,
you lifted this directly out of Rangers of the New Republic, and this was basically here's what Rangers of the New Republic would have looked and felt like. Never mind that it makes no sense at all. It's a proof of concept that they shoved into this season, because I guess they liked the visual of it.
So this episode was directed by Peter Ramsey and written by Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, we know. There's nothing special about Jon Favreau. Let's talk about Peter Ramsey.
Yeah, because he had some interesting credits, and I was like, huh.
So Peter Ramsey is a director. He directed in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Rise of the Guardians.
Those were the notable ones.
Those were the notable two he's directed, but he's also had a big career in the art department. He's been an art department guy for a lot of animation.
Maybe that's why this was so animated, or it felt like
I think
so
that maybe was why
fun.
It's so animated. Oh, he is going to direct an episode of Ahsoka.
I did see that. So this should be, I'm going to look forward to that episode, because maybe that means that's a very colorful and fun. I don't like to say campy when it's not really campy, but like, this was campy in a different kind of Star Wars-y way, if that makes sense. Like, it was a classic Star Wars camp, not overly camp like the next episode. Wink, wink.
Well, when you know that this guy has directed a lot of animation, it makes the sort of animated, for lack of a better word, nature of the action scenes make a lot more sense. Because a lot of the scenes with the Mandalorians battling the pirates on Nevarro, a lot of the beats that are used are beats that show up in animation. All right, Calvin, you want to give us your final thoughts? Hold on. No, because we got to go back. I got to bring up one more thing. I will get shit on if I do not bring up...
Is it flamethrowers?
So unfortunately, I will get shit on if I do not also bring up that Peter Ramsey did work as an illustrator on Bram Stoker's Dracula. I saw that credit there, and I also had to mention. But he's also been crew on Fight Club, Independence Day, Predator 2. Incredible career. But I do have to mention Bram Stoker's Dracula Otherwise, I will get shit from people for not mentioning that he worked in this movie. A certain group of people who I will come for one of these days, and we will hash out my feelings about Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's coming. But for now, Calvin, do you want to give us your final thought?
Zeb Nation. A great episode. 10 out of 10. No notes. I'm excited for the rest of the season. Let's do it.
It's gonna get good. Surely the next episode will be something interesting and deep and introspective.
Yeah. Hey, it's the Bryce Dallas Howard episode. So.
It is the Bryce Dallas Howard episode. You know, the Bryce Dallas Howard episode is always this intense character study.
Yeah.
So we'll see where the rest of the season is going. My final thoughts on the episode are it's good. Like it's good. There was nothing in it that I really thought was like, other than Zeb. Zeb was a get out of my chair and cheer moment. Other than that, there was nothing in there that was like amazingly amazing, but there was also nothing in there that was really that bad except for that last scene. It was just a really solid 43 minutes of Star Wars action. And honestly, that's one of the things I like about them pivoting over to doing the TV shows is we get more time for these action scenes to breathe, and you can do an episode like this. You can do an episode that moves the plot along, but we also have a big Mandalorian battle because that's cool. And I like that. I like it a lot. Bradley, what about you? Final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, it was just a fun Star Wars episode. Like, I think it was just classic fun Star Wars. I actually really like the whole pirate thing. I think that is something that we're not getting enough of in Star Wars. I don't know why, but it's just like, I feel like Hondo Ohnaka show when, I don't know, I just need more of that kind of fun part of Star Wars back, because I look at Mandalorian as now the fun show. I talked about this when Wyatt was on, like that, you know, Andor is so serious and like political and charged, you know, and that's such a good, I mean, I love when Star Wars is like that. I also love when Star Wars is really dark and gritty and, you know, whatever. But like, this is just, Mandalorian is always now it's just the fun show to me. Like, that's just, we're just having fun. This is just fun Star Wars. This is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni playing with their toys and just giving us everything we want randomly. And it doesn't have to be serious. It can be super campy and fun. And we see later on in the season, they definitely do that. With their golden child, Bryce Dallas Howard, and I love it. So this was just a fun, decent episode. I think I like where the season has gone up until this point. I think they've just done a fun job. Like, they're just doing a good job.
Alrighty, well, Calvin, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell the people where they can find First Steps, a Star Wars podcast?
Oh, Lord, yes. You can find us on Twitter at First Steps SW. We're on Instagram as First Steps Star Wars, and follow us on TikTok at First Steps Star Wars. We're starting to get some more TikTok stuff out, so definitely we'd like to grow that viewership. So yeah, sweet.
You can also find me on For Light and Dice, a Star Wars High Republic era TTRPG podcast, and go and, if you like trashy reality television, watch Queen's Court on Peacock. Also, because I don't say it enough, if you do like this show, please make sure to rate and review us on whatever podcasting app you happen to use. I do not believe you actually need to listen to the show to rate and review us on, at the very least, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please definitely do that if you like the show. It helps people find it. And that is it. Calvin, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Bradley, go ahead and run our socials.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Send us a message at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Squad Gaze. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post the podcast as well as exclusive content. Please join us next week and every week for more of Gold Squadron Gaze.
Because Bradley is an editing god, and that is the nicest thing I will say about my fucking co-host.
It really is edited down, though. Like, I took out a solid 30, like, minimum.
Bradley has only two things going for him. He's really good at podcast editing, and his skin is somehow always clear.